It is not just the ARA San Juan. It is a question that has never been answered. How could a predator of the deep, a TR 1700 class submarine worth millions in German engineering, and advertised as the invincible pride of the Argentine Navy, collapse into a crumpled heap of steel in less than 40 milliseconds? Why did a system designed to defy the crushing pressure of the South Atlantic surrender to a single, defective rubber valve? And more importantly, why did 44 elite sailors become the first victims of the very confidence they trusted? But that is only the surface. Behind the moment the pressure hull folded like a soda can in the black abyss lies another story less told, but equally dangerous, about bureaucratic negligence, invisible chemical reactions, and a chain of small errors merging into history. Why did it all happen in the stormy November of 2017, and what actually killed the San Juan, the ocean, the hydrogen, or the silence of command? Stay tuned, because the truth about the eternal silence of the ARA San Juan is unlike any story you know. November 8th, 2017. Ushuaia. They call this port the end of the world, where the winds of Antarctica strip the paint off the buildings and the ocean looks like bruised iron. But inside the hull of the ARA San Juan, the world was warm, electric, and alive. To the 44 crew members, this vessel was not a cage. It was a masterpiece. The San Juan was a TR 1700 class submarine, a German-designed Leviathan, often called the Ferrari of the seas. She was fast, silent, and capable of diving deeper than most of her South American counterparts. She was the apex predator of the Argentine Navy, a 66-meter steel shark designed to hunt in the most hostile waters on Earth. The mood on board was one of professional pride mixed with the easy camaraderie of elite soldiers. As they cast off from the pier, the biting cold of the southern autumn vanished, replaced by the heavy familiar scent of the interior, a mix of hot oil baking bread from the galley and the sharp tang of ozone. In the control room, the lights glowed with the amber warmth of confident technology. This confidence was not unfounded. Just a few years prior, the San Juan had undergone a midlife update, a colossal engineering feat where the hull was literally cut in half to replace the engines and batteries. It was a resurrection of steel, a promise that this ship would serve for another 30 years. The welders had sealed her back together with the precision of surgeons, creating a seamless skin that felt impenetrable. Down in the mess hall, the rhythmic clinking of spoons against ceramic mugs of mate tea kept time with the steady thrum of the diesel engines, drowning out the faint, irregular rattle of a ventilation valve struggling against the sea spray outside. Life at 200 meters deep was a ballet of routine. The sailors played truco with worn cards, shared stories of their families waiting in Mar del Plata, and slept in hot bunks that never grew cold. There was a seduction to the isolation. Down here, politics did not exist. Economic crises did not exist. There was only the crew, the mission, and the machine. They were the guardians of the sovereign sea, tasked with tracking illegal fishing vessels plundering the Argentine coast. They felt untouchable, encased in a bubble of light moving through a universe of darkness. The captain, Pedro Fernandez, commanded his vessel with the calm demeanor of a man who knew his ship's heartbeat better than his own. The systems were checking out green. The batteries were charging. The massive electric motor, a marvel of torque, pushed them effortlessly through the currents. As the days passed, the San Juan moved north, entering the open Atlantic. The ocean surface above began to churn. A heavy storm was brewing, whipping the waves into 8-meter towers of foam. But at periscope depth, the violence of the surface was just a muffled drumbeat. The crew trusted the snorkel, the vital steel lung that broke the surface to suck in air for the diesel generators. It was a standard procedure. Raise the mast, open the valve, breathe. On the night of November 14th, the crew settled into their bunks, lulled to sleep by the ship's vibration, never feeling the sudden microscopic shudder as a wave slapped the snorkel mast, forcing a liter of salt water past a seal that had quietly failed to hold the line. The golden dream remained intact. The lights stayed on. The air remained breathable. To the men and the single woman on board, Eliana Krachik, it was just another shift in the office. They were safe. They were powerful. They were coming home. November 15th, 2017, 07:30. Hours. The tent shifts. The history books close. We are in the room. The South Atlantic is a chaotic machine of 8-meter waves hammering the exposed steel of the snorkel mast. Down in the control room, the world is tilting violently. The San Juan is rolling like a drunkard in the heavy swell. The valve, the snorkel head valve. It is a simple mechanism, a gatekeeper between the atmosphere and the vacuum. But today, the gate is broken. Seawater freezing and salt heavy bypasses the rubber seal. It trickles down the ventilation ducts. It is not a flood. It is a stream, a malicious thread of liquid finding the path of least resistance. It drips past the air scrubbers and falls directly onto the connection bars of battery tank number 3. Chemistry takes over. Salt water meets the charged lead plates. The reaction is instantaneous and violent. The water boils not from heat, but from electrolysis. The tank begins to exhale hydrogen gas. It is invisible. It is odorless. And it is filling the forward compartment, turning the air into a bomb. Fire alarms scream. Smoke thick, acrid tasting of burning plastic chokes the forward passageways. The crew scrambles. This is what they trained for. They are elite. They move with practiced urgency, donning breathing masks, isolating the circuit. Captain Fernandez grabs the radio handset. He contacts the naval base at Mar del Plata. His voice is calm, professional, cutting through the static of the storm. He reports a short circuit. He reports smoke. He reports that the fire is out. The lights flicker back to a steady hum as the chief engineer wipes sweat from his forehead, unaware that the hydrogen levels in the battery compartment are still rising silent and invisible, pooling against the ceiling like a phantom. The false hope arrives. The captain makes a fatal decision. The surface storm is too violent. It is battering the crew and the hull. They need stability to rest and repair. He orders the San Juan to dive, to go deep, to travel on the aft batteries alone.
Dive! 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 Dive!
The ballast tanks vent. The ocean rushes in to pull them down. The rolling stops. The sub levels out at 40 meters, cruising into the smooth, silent embrace of the deep. The panic subsides. The sailors lower their adrenaline. Some return to their bunks to catch a few hours of sleep before their next watch. The nightmare is over. They handled it. They are safe. Down in the battery tank, the hydrogen concentration hits 4%. The critical mass. It waits for a trigger, a spark. Maybe a switch is flipped to turn on a fan. Maybe a loose connection vibrates one last time. At 10:51 a.m., as the sonar operator adjusts the volume on his headset to listen for fishing trawlers, the air inside the forward section ignites. The explosion is not a Hollywood fireball. It is a shock wave of pure pressure. The blast blows out the internal bulkheads, but the explosion is the lesser killer. The explosion weakens the hull just enough for the ocean to notice. The San Juan is at depth. The water pressure outside is pushing against the steel skin with hundreds of tons of force per square meter. the hull integrity fails. The implosion. It happens in 40 milliseconds. To understand this horror, you must understand biology. The human brain takes roughly 100 milliseconds to process a sensory signal to realize, I am in pain, or I am dying. The collapse of the San Juan is faster than human thought. The ocean slams the steel tube shut. The pressure hull goes from a cylinder to a crumpled piece of foil in less than half a second. The air inside is compressed instantly, heating up to temperatures rivaling the surface of the sun for a fraction of a second. There is no screaming. There is no drowning. There is no time to say goodbye. One moment, they are sailors, checking gauges, sleeping in bunks, drinking coffee. In the next 40 milliseconds, they are simply erased. The physics of the event are so violent that they cease to exist as biology. They become part of the geology. The submarine, now a twisted wreck, loses all buoyancy. It becomes a stone. It begins the long, silent fall, down through the twilight zone, down through the midnight zone. It falls for minutes, tumbling in the absolute darkness until it hits the seabed at 907 meters. Silence returns to the Atlantic. The storm rages above, but down here nothing moves. The clock has stopped. The silence that followed was not merely an absence of sound. It was an absence of reality. On the surface, the clocks continued to tick. At the naval base in Mar del Plata, the families gathered behind chain-link fences, clutching rosary beads and photos of smiling young men in dress blues. They waited for the radio check, the standard communication protocol that was due at 22 GUR hours. The radio operators listened to the static. They adjusted the gain. They swept the frequencies. There was nothing but the atmospheric hiss of the South Atlantic. For 48 hours, the official narrative was one of communication failure. The Navy spoke of antenna problems, of bad weather, of standard delays. But deep in the offices of naval intelligence, the mood had already shifted from concern to dread. Submarines do not miss check-ins. They are creatures of strict rhythm. When the rhythm breaks, the machine is broken. The world answered the silence with noise. The search for the ARA San Juan became the largest naval mobilization in the history of the Southern Hemisphere. 18 countries responded. An armada of ships and aircraft descended on the patrol zone. The United States sent P-8 Poseidon aircraft hunting for magnetic anomalies. The Russians sent the Yantar, a spy ship equipped with deep-water submersibles. The British, the Brazilians, the Chileans, old rivals, became allies in the face of the indifference of the sea. But the ocean is too big. The search zone was the size of Spain, a churning expanse of gray water hiding a landscape of underwater canyons and mountain ranges. While the ships scoured the surface, the truth had already been recorded, locked away in a server thousands of miles from Argentina. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, CTBTO, maintains a global network of hydro-acoustic sensors designed to detect secret nuclear explosions. These sensors are so sensitive, they can hear an iceberg cracking an ocean away. 2 stations, one on Ascension Island and one on the Crozet Islands, had picked up a signal. It was short. It was violent. It was defined as a singular, non-natural, impulsive event. The computers triangulated the sound. It originated from the exact coordinates where the San Juan had last reported its position. The experts looked at the waveform. It wasn't the metallic grind of a collision. It wasn't the dull thud of a torpedo. It was the sharp, instantaneous spike of an implosion. The sound of air being murdered by water. The data was conclusive, but the ocean refused to yield the body. The weeks turned into months. The International Armada slowly retreated, defeated by the sheer scale of the task. The families were left with nothing but a wreath tossed into the waves and a presumptive death certificate. The San Juan had become a ghost story. Somewhere in the dark, a crewman's digital watch strapped to a wrist that no longer existed beeped an alarm for a shift change that would never happen, its tiny sound swallowed by the weight of 1,000 atmospheres. 1 year passed. In November 2018, the Argentine government played its final card. They hired Ocean Infinity, a private American seabed exploration company known for finding the impossible. Their ship, the Seabed Constructor, was not a warship. It was a vessel of pure science, a floating hive of robotics. The Seabed Constructor did not use sonar from the surface. It deployed a fleet of autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs. These were 5 yellow torpedo-shaped drones, each worth millions of dollars. They were the bloodhounds of the abyss. They swam deep, skimming just meters above the canyon floor, scanning the mud with high-resolution side-scan sonar. They worked in shifts, mapping the darkness, strip by strip, pixel by pixel. For 60 days, they found nothing but rocks and geology. They found false positives, underwater formations that looked like ships, but turned out to be ancient stone ridges. The contract was ending. The ship was preparing to leave. The crew was exhausted. On the final day of the operation, November 16, 2018, exactly 1 year and 1 day since the disappearance, the analysts reviewed the data from a Class C target. It was a low-probability hit, just a smudge on the sonar screen. They called it Point 24. The captain of the Seabed Constructor decided to investigate. It was a gamble. They lowered the ROV remotely operated vehicle. This was a tethered robot, a set of eyes connected to the ship by a miles-long fiber optic umbilical cord. Down it went. 100 meters, 500 meters, 800 meters. The temperature dropped to near freezing. The pressure climbed. The cameras showed only the endless marine snow, organic debris drifting down like dust in an abandoned attic. At 907 meters, the bottom loomed into view. The ROV pilots squinted at the monitors. The lights cut through the gloom. Shapes began to emerge from the sediment. Twisted metal, tubes, wiring, and then the undeniable proof. The camera panned over a massive steel object. It was the propeller. The brass blades were still intact, buried partially in the silt. Nearby lay the sail, the conning tower torn from the hull, but still upright, bearing the faded white markings of the Argentine Navy. The San Juan had not just sunk, it had disintegrated. The debris field was scattered over an area the size of 2 football fields. The main pressure hull, the sturdy steel tube that had held the lives of 44 people, was unrecognizable. It had imploded inward, collapsing onto itself like a crushed aluminum can. The engineers on the surface stared in silence. They were looking at the violence of physics, frozen in time. The force of the water had been so great that the steel had folded with terrifying plasticity. The ROV zoomed in. The camera drifted past the wreckage of the torpedo tubes. It floated over the twisted remains of the battery compartment. The tragedy was no longer theoretical. It was right there, illuminated in high-definition LED. Lying in the silt, untouched by the currents, a dress uniform jacket remained perfectly folded. The gold buttons shining under the ROV lights, waiting for an inspection that had been canceled a year ago. The investigation of the wreckage confirmed the theory. The hull had failed near the aft batteries. The implosion had been total. But the discovery also brought a strange cold comfort. The condition of the wreck confirmed that the crew had not suffered. They had not suffocated in the dark for days waiting for rescue. The end had been instantaneous. The ocean had been merciful in its brutality. The Seabed Constructor hovered above the grave, its dynamic positioning thrusters fighting the surface swell, while 900 meters below the San Juan rested. The machines had done their job. They had raised the truth from the dead. But they could not raise the men. The physics that crushed the ship made salvage impossible. The San Juan would remain there, an eternal monument of steel in a world without light. The wreck of the ARA San Juan lies in the dark, cold silence of the Argentine continental slope. It is no longer a vessel of war. It is a permanent feature of the geography, a tomb of iron welded to the seabed by pressure and time. The tragedy serves as a brutal reminder of the fragile truce between humanity and the elements. We build floating fortresses. We wrap ourselves in high tensile steel and convince ourselves that we have conquered the environment. We trust the gauges. We trust the welds. We trust the official lie that technology makes us invincible. But the ocean is patient. It does not hate us, but it does not forgive us. It waits for the smallest opening, a rusted hinge, a tired sensor, or a rubber valve no larger than a dinner plate. The San Juan was not destroyed by a foreign enemy or a complex weapon system. It was taken by the sea itself, allowed inside by a $10 seal that failed to hold the line against the infinite weight of the Atlantic. Nature always wins. It does not need weapons. It only needs gravity and time. 44 souls remain on eternal patrol, guarding a border that no longer matters to them. They are preserved in the cold, held in the crushing embrace of the deep, a silent warning to the surface world. When you enter the void, you are not the predator. You are the prey. And the water is always waiting to reclaim what is hers. History is not just dates and numbers. It is the collective memory of our species. Thank you for taking the time to remember these events with us. If you have a story or an event you believe deserves to be told, leave it in the comments. We are listening.